A cold Seattle rain pounded the alleyway where 7-year-old Emma Reynolds huddled against Zeus, her father's German shepherd. The massive dog's body curved protectively around her small frame, his ears alert to every sound in the darkness. 3 men with flashlights swept the street beyond their hiding place. "They're looking for us again," Emma whispered, burying her face in Zeus's damp fur. Her thin fingers clutched the worn leather collar Robert had placed on Zeus the day before he died. "Dad said you'd protect me forever. Right, boy?" Zeus responded with a low rumble, pressing closer as Emma's body shivered with fever. From the shadows across the street, social worker Jessica Morgan watched, rain streaming down her face. Protocol demanded she call police immediately. Compassion kept her frozen, witnessing something both heartbreaking and extraordinary. When Zeus's amber eyes locked with hers through the darkness. Jessica knew this moment would change everything. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. Pioneer Square, once Seattle's heart, told 2 stories at once. Historic brick buildings housed art galleries and trendy cafes where tourists and tech workers mingled. Yet in the shadows between these islands of prosperity, another Seattle existed, one where people like Emma Reynolds slipped through the cracks. Emma wasn't always homeless. 7 months ago, she had lived in a modest apartment with her father Robert, her mother Melissa, and Zeus. Her auburn hair was usually neatly braided then, not matted and dirty as it was now. The freckles across her nose stood out starkly against her too pale skin, and her green eyes, so like her father's, held wisdom no child should possess. She carried only what mattered: a small purple backpack containing her father's photograph, a worn teddy bear missing one eye, and a notebook where she recorded memories she feared forgetting. Zeus had been extraordinary long before he became Emma's guardian. The 6-year-old German shepherd had served 3 years with Seattle PD's K-9 unit until taking a bullet meant for his handler. The injury left him with a distinctive scar above his right eye and ended his police career. Robert Reynolds, then working as an accountant for Lambert Enterprises, had adopted the retired K-9 when he was scheduled for euthanasia. Zeus's loyalty transferred completely to his new family, especially to little Emma. Robert Reynolds had been methodical and quiet, traits that served him well as an accountant, but perhaps sealed his fate when he discovered financial irregularities at Lambert Enterprises. His body was found in his car, an apparent suicide that those who knew him questioned silently, but never allowed. Melissa Reynolds vanished 2 days after the funeral, leaving Emma with a neighbor while she sorted things out. She returned only to pack clothing before disappearing with Richard Lambert, the company's wealthy owner. Emma overheard the neighbor's phone call to child services and fled with Zeus before they arrived. Jessica Morgan had worked Seattle's Family Services Division for 15 years. At 42, divorce had left her alone but dedicated to her cases with almost maternal ferocity. The system she represented was flawed. She knew this better than most, having grown up in it herself after her own mother's overdose. What she witnessed between Emma and Zeus defied every protocol in her training manual, yet spoke to something primal she couldn't ignore. Emma's last normal day began with pancakes. Robert had made them in animal shapes, a tradition since her 5th birthday, placing an elephant-shaped pancake on her plate with exaggerated ceremony. Zeus sat patiently beside her chair, knowing Emma would sneak him pieces when her father pretended not to notice. These moments of ordinary happiness would soon become treasures. Emma clutched in memory. "You're not going to work today, Daddy?" Emma had asked, noticing her father's casual clothes instead of his usual button-down shirt and tie. Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Not today, sweetheart. I have some important things to take care of here." He glanced repeatedly at his phone, jumping slightly when it buzzed with messages. After breakfast, Emma found him in his home office, frantically sorting through papers, some of which he fed into a small shredder, while others he placed in a waterproof pouch. Zeus lay in the doorway, watchful, sensing the tension that filled their small apartment. "Emma," Robert said, kneeling to her level when he noticed her watching, "I need you to remember something very important. If anything strange happens, if people you don't know try to talk to you about my work, you trust Zeus. Only Zeus." His hands trembled as he adjusted Zeus's collar, checking that it fit securely. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Emma asked, fear bubbling in her chest. "Nothing's wrong," he said too quickly. "But there's something special about Zeus's collar, something important hidden there. If anything happens to me, Zeus will protect it, and he'll protect you." Later that afternoon, Melissa had returned from shopping to find Robert agitated, pacing the apartment. Their argument started in whispers but escalated quickly. Emma retreated to her room with Zeus, burying her face in his fur to block out the angry voices. "They're going to come after all of us if you do this, Robert." Melissa had shouted. "It's already done," Robert replied. "The evidence is secure. Lambert can't hide what they've been doing forever." That night, Robert had tucked Emma into bed with unusual solemnity. "Remember what I said about Zeus, about his collar?" When Emma nodded, he continued, "Zeus will always protect you, Emma. No matter what happens, he'll be there for you." It was the last time she saw her father alive. The next morning brought police officers to their door. Robert's car had been found at Alki Beach, his body inside with a single gunshot wound to the head. A note in the glove compartment apologized for the shame he'd brought upon his family. The gun in his hand belonged to him, registered properly 2 years earlier. Case closed, suicide. Emma knew better. Her father had been afraid, but not sad. He'd been determined, not defeated. She tried telling the police officers this, but they patted her head with pitying looks. "Grief does strange things, sweetie," one officer said. "Your daddy was sick in a way you couldn't see." Melissa moved through the days following Robert's death like a ghost. She took phone calls in whispers, staring at Emma with increasing detachment. When Richard Lambert appeared at the funeral, offering his deepest condolences to the family of my valued employee, Melissa flinched at his touch but didn't pull away. 2 days later, Emma woke to find her mother packing a suitcase. "We need some time apart." "Emma," Melissa said, avoiding her daughter's eyes, I just can't right now. Mrs. Grady next door will watch you for a few days while I sort things out." "Take me with you," Emma pleaded. "And Zeus. We can all go together." Melissa's laugh was brittle. "Richard hates dogs. And where I'm going, there's no place for a child right now, Mrs. Grady was kind but overwhelmed. A 70-year-old widow with arthritis who couldn't manage an energetic child and a large German shepherd for long. Emma overheard her phone call on the third day. The mother just left her, ran off with some rich boyfriend. Mrs. Grady told Child Services. The father killed himself last week. Someone needs to come get this child and the dog. Well, I don't know what happens to the dog. That's your department, isn't it? That night, Emma packed her purple backpack with her most precious possessions, her father's photograph, her teddy bear, a change of clothes, and the emergency $20 bill her father had given her just in case. When Mrs. Grady fell asleep in front of her television programs, Emma slipped out with Zeus, running until her legs ached, the German shepherd keeping perfect pace beside her. Their first night on the streets. Zeus led her to a construction site, finding a dry corner beneath a tarp where they huddled together for warmth. In the morning, he brought her a partially eaten sandwich from a nearby trash can. Emma couldn't bring herself to eat it, but the message was clear: Zeus would provide. Over the following weeks, they established routines. Zeus would wake her at dawn, before most people were about, so she could use public restrooms to wash her face and brush her teeth with the travel toothbrush from her backpack. He seemed to know which restaurants discarded edible food and which homeless shelters handed out meals without asking too many questions. More remarkably, Zeus appeared to understand the threat of discovery. When police cars passed or whenever social workers conducted their outreach walks through Pioneer Square, he would guide Emma into shadows, using his body to shield her from view. At night, he curled around her in whatever shelter they'd found, warming her with his body and alerting her to approaching strangers. Emma developed a persistent cough that worsened in the damp Seattle spring. Zeus would whine anxiously when her coughing fits came, pressing closer as if trying to absorb her illness into his own strong body. On particularly bad nights, he would lick the tears from her cheeks as she clutched her father's photograph. "I miss him so much," she would whisper into Zeus's fur. "Dad said you'd protect me, but he didn't say for how long. What if you leave me too?" Zeus would respond by placing his heavy paw over her arm, his amber eyes fixed on hers with an intelligence that sometimes startled her. In those moments, Emma believed Zeus understood every word she said. By June, Emma had lost weight her small frame couldn't afford to lose. Her clothes hung on her, and the cough had settled deep in her chest. Zeus began to change his behavior, growing desperate in his efforts to find food, sometimes returning with convenience store sandwiches still in their plastic packaging items he couldn't have found in garbage bins. Emma never questioned these gifts. When you're 7 and abandoned, miracles don't seem impossible, especially when they come from a dog who looks at you with eyes that promise to never leave you alone in this frightening world. Jessica Morgan first spotted Emma and Zeus 3 weeks into their life on the streets. At the time, Jessica was conducting her regular outreach at St. James Cathedral, where the church offered Tuesday morning breakfast to Seattle's homeless population. The child had lingered at the edge of the gathering, the massive German shepherd alert at her side. When another social worker approached them, the dog had guided the girl away, disappearing into the warren of alleys before anyone could intervene. "Did you see that?" Jessica had asked her colleague. "That girl couldn't be more than 7 or 8. The dog looked like it was protecting her," her colleague replied. "Probably belonged to some homeless guy who's inside getting food. We should alert police." But something in the interaction had struck Jessica as unusual. The dog hadn't been aggressive, merely protective, and the girl hadn't appeared frightened of the animal, but rather seemed to be following its lead. Jessica spotted them twice more over the following week, once near Pike Place Market and again in Occidental Park. Each time, she noticed the same pattern, the dog keeping watch while the girl rested, then alerting her when anyone approached too closely. Jessica began carrying extra sandwiches and bottled water, hoping for an opportunity to make contact. Her chance came during a rare sunny afternoon in Pioneer Square. Jessica was eating her lunch on a bench when she noticed Emma sitting alone under a tree, Zeus lying beside her with his head on her lap. The girl was coughing violently, her thin shoulders shaking with the effort, even from a distance. Jessica could see the child's flushed cheeks, a likely sign of fever. Jessica approached slowly, keeping her hands visible. "Hi there," she called softly when she was still several yards away. "I have some extra food if you're hungry." Zeus immediately rose to a standing position, placing himself between Jessica and Emma. He didn't growl, but his posture made his message clear: come no closer. "It's okay, boy," Jessica said, kneeling to appear less threatening. She placed a sandwich and water bottle on the ground, then backed away. "I'm not going to hurt either of you," Emma whispered something to the dog. And to Jessica's amazement, Zeus relaxed slightly, though his eyes never left her. "My name is Jessica. I've seen you around a few times. Are you okay? That cough sounds pretty bad." The girl hesitated, then spoke in a hoarse voice. "I'm fine. Zeus takes care of me." "Zeus? Huh. He's a beautiful dog. Very loyal to you." Emma's chin lifted with pride. "He was my dad's. He was a police dog before." This information surprised Jessica. "A police dog? That's special. Where is your dad now?" The girl's face clouded. "He died. Mom left after." Jessica felt a familiar ache in her chest, the pain of witnessing yet another child failed by adults who should have protected her. "I'm sorry about your dad. Is there someone else taking care of you, grandparents or an aunt, maybe?" Emma shook her head, then broke into another coughing fit. Zeus whined anxiously, pressing against her side. "You need medicine for that cough," Jessica said. "I can help you get some. There are places where you and Zeus could stay together." This was not entirely true. No shelter in Seattle allowed pets, especially not large dogs, but Jessica couldn't bear the thought of separating this child from her obvious source of security and comfort. "We're okay," Emma insisted, her hand clutching Zeus's collar. "Dad said Zeus would protect me, and he does." Jessica nodded, not wanting to push too hard on this first contact. "I'll be here tomorrow, same time. If you want more food, maybe some cough medicine too." For the next week, Jessica made daily visits to the park, gradually earning enough trust that Emma would accept food and medicine. Zeus remained vigilant but allowed Jessica to sit closer each day. The social worker noticed things about the dog that piqued her professional curiosity, the way he scanned their surroundings systematically, how he responded to specific hand gestures Emma made, almost like trained signals. During one visit, Jessica brought children's cold medicine and a sandwich. As Emma ate, Jessica gently probed for more information. "Zeus is really well trained. Was he your dad's work partner?" Emma shook her head. "Dad saved him. Zeus got hurt protecting his police person, and they were going to put him to sleep. Dad said that wasn't fair after Zeus was a hero." Jessica watched as the dog's ears pricked up at the mention of police, confirming her suspicion about his training. "What kind of work did your dad do?" "He was an accountant," Emma pronounced carefully. "He worked with numbers at Lambert Enterprises, the big building downtown with the eagle statue." The name rang a bell. Jessica recalled seeing something recently in the Seattle Times about Lambert Enterprises, something about an investigation or financial irregularities. She made a mental note to look it up. "Emma, I need to ask you something important. Are you running from someone? Is that why you and Zeus hide so carefully?" The girl's eyes widened, and she looked down. "The people from Child Services want to take me away from Zeus. Dad said we have to stay together. He's protecting something important." "What's Zeus protecting?" Emma's hand went to the dog's collar. "I don't know exactly. Dad said there was truth in his collar, and that bad people might want it. That's why we can't go to shelters or talk to police." Jessica felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle breeze. "Emma, did your dad have problems at work before he died?" "He was scared," Emma whispered. "He stayed up all night working on his computer. He argued with Mom about Mr. Lambert." On her next visit, Jessica brought a newspaper clipping she'd found in the Times archives. The small article, dated just a week before Robert Reynolds' death, mentioned that the Seattle DA's office was investigating potential fraud at Lambert Enterprises following an internal whistleblower report. Emma's reaction to the newspaper was immediate and visceral. She grabbed it from Jessica's hands, eyes scanning the text she could only partially read. "That's why," she whispered. "That's why they made it look like—" "Made what look like what?" "Emma," Jessica asked gently. "Dad wouldn't kill himself," Emma said fiercely. "He promised he'd never leave me. The police said he did. But he wouldn't." Zeus grew agitated as Emma became upset, nudging her hand with his nose. The girl immediately calmed, taking deep breaths as she stroked his fur. Jessica noticed how the dog watched her face intently, seeming to assess her emotional state. That evening, Jessica made a call she'd been contemplating for days. Detective James Carter had been mentioned in passing in another article about Lambert Enterprises, identified as leading the police side of the investigation. "Detective Carter, my name is Jessica Morgan. I'm a social worker with Seattle Family Services. I've made contact with a homeless child who may be connected to your Lambert Enterprises case. Her name is Emma Reynolds. Her father was Robert Reynolds." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "Are you telling me Robert Reynolds' daughter is homeless?" Carter's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "We've been looking for her and her mother since his death. She's on the streets with her father's dog, a former police K-9 named Zeus. The mother apparently left with Richard Lambert himself." "Jesus Christ," Carter muttered. "Where is she now? I need to see her immediately." "That's complicated," Jessica explained. "She's avoiding authorities because she's afraid of being separated from the dog. And based on what she's told me, she might have reason to be cautious about who she trusts." "Listen carefully," Carter said, his voice dropping. "Robert Reynolds was my friend. His death was ruled suicide. But I never believed it. He was helping us build a case against Lambert. If his daughter is on the streets with that dog, she might be in serious danger. Lambert has resources and connections. We need to bring her in safely." Jessica felt the weight of her next decision. "Meet me tomorrow at Pioneer Square, 2 p.m. I'll try to have her there. But I'm warning you, try to separate her from that dog, and you'll lose any chance of gaining her trust." "Understood," Carter said. "And Morgan, don't tell anyone else about this. Not your supervisor, not your colleagues. Lambert has people everywhere." As Jessica ended the call, she glanced at her department ID badge clipped to her purse, the City of Seattle emblem prominent above her name and title. For the first time in her 15-year career, she questioned whether the system she represented could actually protect the child who needed her. Building trust with a traumatized child was delicate work under the best circumstances. Doing so with a homeless 7-year-old guarded by a former police dog required patience beyond measure. For 2 weeks following her conversation with Detective Carter, Jessica visited Emma daily, bringing food, medicine, and clean clothes. The meeting with Carter had fallen through when Emma and Zeus didn't appear at Pioneer Square that day, leaving Jessica to wonder if the girl had somehow sensed the trap. Zeus remained Emma's constant sentinel, but Jessica noticed subtle changes in the dog's behavior toward her. He no longer positioned himself directly between them. Instead, he would lie nearby, alert but tolerant of Jessica's presence. On her 5th visit, Zeus did something that brought tears to Jessica's eyes. He briefly rested his head on her knee while she sat talking with Emma. "He likes you," Emma said, her voice tinged with surprise. "He doesn't like many people." "I'm honored," Jessica replied, carefully petting the dog's head. "Zeus is very smart. He knows I want to help you both." Emma's illness concerned Jessica deeply. The cough medicine provided temporary relief, but the child needed proper medical care. Her cheeks remained flushed with persistent fever, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. More alarming was the way Emma sometimes paused mid-sentence to catch her breath, as though the simple act of speaking had become exhausting. "Emma," Jessica said one afternoon as they shared a sandwich, "you need to see a doctor. That cough isn't getting better with the medicine I brought." The girl tensed immediately. "They'll take Zeus away. What if I promise to make sure that doesn't happen?" Emma's green eyes, so eerily similar to her father's in the photograph she carried, studied Jessica's face. "You can't promise that. Dad said the system doesn't understand about Zeus. That's why we have to stay together, no matter what." Jessica tried a different approach. "Can you tell me more about your dad? What kind of person was he?" The question opened a floodgate. Emma spoke of her father with fierce pride, how he taught her to read before kindergarten, his pancake-making skills, the way he would create elaborate bedtime stories featuring Zeus as a superhero. She described their Sunday rituals of visiting different Seattle parks, always ending with ice cream regardless of the weather. "Dad never broke promises," Emma said firmly. "Never. So when he promised Zeus would protect me forever, I know he meant it." "What about your mom?" Jessica asked gently. Emma's expression clouded. "She changed. After Dad's work problems started, she was angry all the time. She said Dad was throwing everything away, that we'd end up with nothing because he couldn't let things go." "What things?" "Numbers that didn't add up," Emma replied, quoting words clearly heard from adult conversations. "Dad said someone was stealing money and hurting people, and he couldn't pretend he didn't know." During these conversations, Jessica noticed something peculiar about Zeus's behavior. Whenever Emma mentioned her father's work or Lambert Enterprises, the dog would grow restless, sometimes whining softly or pacing in small circles. It was as if certain topics triggered specific responses in the animal. Jessica began researching police canine training methods, learning that dogs like Zeus were often trained to react to particular keywords or phrases as signals. She wondered if Robert Reynolds had embedded some kind of training related to his work situation, perhaps even connected to whatever truth he claimed was hidden in Zeus's collar. The collar itself was ordinary-looking worn leather with a standard buckle, a rabies tag, and a metal nameplate engraved with Zeus and what appeared to be a service number. Jessica had examined it briefly when petting the dog but found nothing obviously unusual about it. On her 10th visit, Jessica brought a Seattle map. "Emma, I'm curious about something. Can you show me where you and Zeus have been staying at night? I worry about you when it rains." Emma hesitated, then pointed to several locations around Pioneer Square in the International District. "We move around. Zeus picks safe places." "Does Zeus ever try to go to specific places? Places that seem important to him?" The question struck a chord. Emma's eyes widened. "Yes, sometimes he pulls me toward Dad's old building, the Lambert one. And there's a park near the water where he always wants to go, but I don't let him because there are too many people." "Which park?" "I don't know the name. It has a big fountain, and you can see ferries." "Waterfront Park," Jessica said. "Near the ferry terminal." Emma nodded. "Dad used to meet someone there sometimes, a man in a blue jacket. They would talk, and Dad would give him papers." Jessica carefully controlled her expression, though her heart raced. "Emma, this is important. Do you remember anything about that man? His name, maybe?" "Carter," Emma said after a moment's thought. "Like the president in my history book. Dad called him Jim sometimes." Detective James Carter. The connection was confirmed. Robert Reynolds had been feeding information to the detective investigating Lambert Enterprises. "Emma, I know Detective Carter. He was your dad's friend. He's been looking for you." Fear flashed across the girl's face. "Is he police? We can't trust police. Dad said so." "Your dad trusted him," Jessica pointed out gently. "That's why they met at the park." Emma fell silent, processing this information. Zeus pressed against her side, as though sensing her confusion. "What if we go to that park together?" Jessica suggested. "Just to look around. Zeus seems to want to go there." "Maybe your dad left something important there." The suggestion appealed to Emma's innate curiosity and her trust in Zeus's instincts. She agreed to visit Waterfront Park the following day, though she made Jessica promise they would leave immediately if Zeus showed any sign of distress. That evening, Jessica called Detective Carter from a payphone rather than her cell or office line. "I'm bringing her to Waterfront Park tomorrow at noon," Jessica said when Carter answered. "She mentioned it's where she used to meet you with her father." "Yes," Carter confirmed. "It was our exchange point. I'd meet Robert there when he had new documents." "Jesus, I can't believe she remembers that." "Kids notice more than we give them credit for," Jessica replied. "Listen, she's sick respiratory infection. Probably pneumonia at this point. She needs medical attention soon. Bring her in, then, to a hospital." "She won't come without assurances about the dog. Zeus isn't just a pet to her. Carter He's her only remaining connection to her father, her protector. Try to separate them, and we'll lose any chance of gaining her trust or finding out what Robert might have left behind." Carter's sigh crackled through the line. "I'll see what I can do. But you should know, my captain is putting pressure on this investigation. Lambert's lawyers are circling, claiming harassment. Without Robert's evidence, the case is circumstantial at best. Emma says her father told her the truth is in Zeus's collar. Does that mean anything to you?" A long pause followed. "Maybe. Robert was paranoid toward the end with good reason, as it turned out. He mentioned creating a backup of his evidence that even Lambert's tech people couldn't trace or destroy. I assumed he meant a physical copy hidden somewhere." "Well, he clearly thought the dog was part of his contingency plan. Tomorrow, noon, come alone." The next morning dawned clear and warm, a rarity in Seattle's typically overcast June. Jessica met Emma and Zeus at their usual spot, bringing breakfast sandwiches and orange juice. Emma looked worse, her breathing shallow, her movements sluggish. Zeus stayed pressed against her side, occasionally licking her hand as if trying to comfort her. They made their way slowly to Waterfront Park, Emma stopping frequently to catch her breath. As they approached the fountain, Zeus's demeanor changed dramatically. His ears perked forward, his posture alert but not aggressive. He began pulling gently on his leash, leading them toward a specific bench overlooking Elliott Bay. "This is where they met," Emma confirmed, her voice thin with fatigue. "Dad would sit here, and his friend would sit next to him. They pretended they didn't know each other if other people were around." Jessica scanned the area, spotting Detective Carter standing near the ferry terminal entrance, maintaining a discreet distance as they'd arranged. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a navy windbreaker, but his alert posture screamed law enforcement to Jessica's experienced eye. Zeus saw him too. The dog's reaction was immediate and unexpected. His tail began to wag, and he pulled toward Carter with clear recognition. "Zeus knows him," Emma said, surprise evident in her voice. "That's Detective Carter," Jessica explained. "Your dad's friend. Would it be okay if he came over to say hello?" Emma hesitated, then nodded, her hand tightening on Zeus's leash. Jessica waved Carter over. He approached slowly, his eyes fixed not on Emma, but on Zeus, a mix of emotions playing across his weathered face. "Hey there, big guy," Carter said softly when he was a few feet away. "Remember me?" Zeus strained toward him, whining softly. "You can pet him," Emma said, her voice small but determined. "He remembers you." Carter knelt, allowing Zeus to sniff his hand before gently scratching behind the dog's ears. "I've been looking for you two for a long time," he said, finally looking at Emma. "Your dad was my friend." "I'm so sorry about what happened." "Dad didn't kill himself," Emma stated flatly. "I know," Carter replied, holding her gaze. "I've always known that." The simple validation brought tears to Emma's eyes. She coughed harshly, the sound wet and concerning. Carter's expression darkened with worry. "You're sick. Emma, we need to get you to a doctor." She shook her head. "Not without Zeus. They'll take him away." "No one is separating you from Zeus," Carter assured her, looking to Jessica for support. "Right, Ms. Morgan." "That's right." Jessica confirmed. We'll figure something out. But Emma, you need medicine stronger than what I can bring you. You have an infection in your lungs that could become very dangerous. Emma looked down at Zeus, who sat attentively at her feet. Dad said Zeus was protecting something important. In his collar. Carter nodded. Your dad told me he had backup evidence. I think he meant Zeus was protecting it. May I check his collar? I promise I won't take it off him. After a moment's hesitation, Emma nodded. Carter carefully examined Zeus's collar, his fingers exploring the worn leather, the metal tags, the buckle. Nothing seemed unusual or modified. The evidence might not be in the physical collar, Jessica suggested. Maybe Zeus himself is the key somehow. Robert trained him to go to specific locations or to recognize certain people. Carter considered this. Robert was clever. He wouldn't make it obvious. He addressed Emma directly. Did your dad teach Zeus any special commands, things that might seem unusual for a dog to know? Emma thought for a moment. He taught Zeus to find Mom's keys when she lost them. And he had a command that made Zeus bring his work bag. What was the command? Carter asked, leaning forward. Evidence, Emma said. Dad would say Zeus, evidence, and Zeus would bring his work bag. Carter and Jessica exchanged meaningful glances. Zeus, evidence, Carter said clearly. The change in Zeus was immediate and dramatic. He stood at attention, then began pulling Emma toward the waterfront, away from the main park area. He wants to go that way, Emma said, struggling to hold the leash as Zeus pulled insistently. They followed Zeus along the waterfront promenade, past tourists and street performers, until they reached a less populated area near a maintenance building. Zeus led them to a specific concrete planter, where he began to dig at the soil with increasing urgency. Stop him, before someone notices, Carter hissed, looking around nervously. Jessica gently pulled Zeus back while Carter knelt by the planter, discreetly sifting through the disturbed soil. After a moment, his fingers closed around something small and hard. He pulled out a waterproof key fob, the kind used for electronic locks. A storage key, he murmured, turning it over in his hand. Clever, Robert. Very clever. Emma broke into another coughing fit, this one more severe than previous episodes. She doubled over, struggling to catch her breath. Zeus whined anxiously, pressing against her legs. That's it, Jessica said firmly. She needs a hospital now. But Zeus... Emma began weakly. Zeus comes too, Jessica insisted, looking challengingly at Carter. You're a detective. Make it happen. Carter nodded grimly. My car's nearby. Let's go. As they helped Emma toward the parking area, Jessica noticed a black SUV with tinted windows slowly cruising past them. The vehicle circled the block, appearing again as they reached Carter's sedan. We're being watched, Jessica whispered to Carter. Lambert's security, he confirmed quietly. They've been following me for weeks. We need to move quickly. They helped Emma into the back seat, Zeus jumping in beside her without prompting. As Carter started the engine, Jessica glanced back to see the black SUV pulling out behind them. We've got company, she warned. Carter checked his rearview mirror. Hold on. He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. This is Detective Carter. I need an escort for a protected witness. Approaching Virginia Mason from the south on First Avenue. Black SUV following. Likely Lambert security. Yes. I'll hold until patrol can intercept. Emma leaned against Zeus in the back seat, her eyes half closed with exhaustion and fever. The dog remained vigilant, his body positioned protectively around her small frame, amber eyes fixed on the road behind them. Jessica reached back to check Emma's forehead, alarmed at the heat radiating from her skin. "Hurry," she urged Carter. "She's burning up." As they navigated Seattle's downtown streets, Jessica watched the emotions playing across Carter's face: determination, anger, and something deeper that looked remarkably like guilt. She wondered what history lay between him and Robert Reynolds, what promises might have been made and broken. The black SUV remained steadily behind them until a police cruiser appeared, lights flashing, pulling in between their vehicles. A second patrol car joined moments later, effectively creating a barrier. Carter's shoulders relaxed marginally. "We'll be at the hospital in 3 minutes. Jessica, I need you to run interference with the staff about Zeus. I'll handle security and make some calls about Emma's situation." "What about what we found?" Jessica asked quietly, mindful of Emma's presence. Carter patted his pocket where the key fob rested. "This might be the evidence we need to bring Lambert down and prove Robert was murdered. But right now, that little girl's health is our priority." Jessica nodded, reaching back again to smooth Emma's tangled hair. "We're almost there. Sweetie, just hold on a little longer." Zeus licked Emma's pale cheek, his eyes momentarily meeting Jessica's with an intelligence that still startled her. In that moment, Jessica made a silent promise to both Emma and Zeus she would protect their bond, whatever bureaucratic battles lay ahead. Some connections were too sacred to break, even when they defied every regulation in her professional handbook. Virginia Mason Hospital's emergency entrance blazed with fluorescent light as Carter pulled up to the ambulance bay. A security guard approached to wave them away, but Carter flashed his badge through the window. "Seattle PD, I have a critically ill child who's been followed by suspicious individuals. I need immediate medical attention and security protocols initiated." The guard's demeanor changed instantly. He spoke into his radio while directing them to pull forward. Within moments, medical staff emerged with a wheelchair. Emma, barely conscious now, clung to Zeus's fur as Jessica tried to help her from the car. "The dog needs to remain outside," a nurse stated firmly when Zeus attempted to follow Emma. "No," Emma gasped, suddenly alert in her panic. "Please, Zeus stays with me." Carter stepped forward. "This is a police K-9 providing protective custody for a witness in an ongoing investigation. The dog stays with the child." The nurse hesitated, looking to her supervisor who had just arrived. The older woman assessed the situation quickly: the desperate child, the protective dog, the determined detective, and the social worker standing unified. "Get them to Pediatric Exam 3, she decided. "It's private and away from the main floor, but the dog must be controlled at all times." "Thank you," Jessica breathed, relief washing over her. Zeus remained remarkably composed as they navigated the hospital corridors, staying close to Emma's wheelchair without pulling or showing signs of stress, despite the unfamiliar environment. Jessica marveled at his training and intuition. This was clearly no ordinary dog. In the exam room, Emma's condition was quickly assessed as pneumonia with severe dehydration. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, frowned at Zeus's presence, but focused on her patient after a brief explanation from Carter. She needs IV antibiotics immediately and likely a few days of hospitalization, the doctor informed them after examining Emma. Her oxygen levels are concerning. We'll need consent for treatment since she's a minor. I'm her social worker, Jessica explained. Her mother abandoned her, and her father is deceased. I can provide emergency consent. As Jessica handled the paperwork, Carter stepped into the hallway to make calls. Zeus settled beside Emma's bed, his head resting near her hand as nurses started an IV line. Despite her obvious fear of the needle, Emma remained stoically brave, her fingers curled in Zeus's fur. "You're doing great, Emma," Jessica encouraged, sitting on her other side. "The medicine will help you feel better soon." Emma's eyes were glassy with fever. "Don't let them take Zeus," she whispered for the 100th time. "I won't. I promise." Carter returned, looking grim. "We have a situation. Hospital administration is on their way down. They're insisting the dog be removed once Emma is stabilized. And there's more. Child Protective Services has been notified. They're sending someone to assess Emma's placement options." Jessica's heart sank. That was fast. "Who called them?" "Not me," Carter said meaningfully. "Someone in administration made the call after they ran Emma's name through their system. There's an active search file on her from when she disappeared from her neighbor's home. They'll try to separate them," Jessica stated flatly. "Yes. And there's something else." Carter lowered his voice. "Two men identifying themselves as family representatives just arrived in the lobby asking about Emma. Hospital security is stalling them, but they presented documentation claiming to be authorized by Melissa Reynolds to check on her daughter." "Lambert's people?" Carter nodded. "Almost certainly. They move fast." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Two hospital security guards were speaking with a woman in a business suit who was showing identification. Behind them stood two men in dark suits, their posture suggesting they were more than ordinary businessmen. "Ms. Morgan?" The woman in the business suit entered the room, her expression professionally neutral. "I'm Diane Winters from Child Protective Services. We received notification of Emma Reynolds' whereabouts. I'll need to speak with you about the circumstances and arrange appropriate placement." Zeus rose to standing position, his posture alert but not aggressive. Emma's fingers tightened in his fur. "Ms. Winters," Jessica began. "Emma has been through severe trauma. This dog is her emotional support animal and belonged to her late father. Separating them would cause significant psychological harm. I understand your concern, but regulations don't allow. I need to show you something." Carter interrupted, stepping forward with his badge. "Detective James Carter, Seattle PD. Emma Reynolds is a material witness in an ongoing homicide investigation. Her father was murdered, and she may have been targeted as well. The dog is actually a former police K-9 and is currently providing protective custody." Winters blinked, clearly not expecting this complication. "I wasn't informed of any investigation." "It's classified," Carter replied smoothly. "And those men in the hallway, they work for the person of interest in our investigation. Emma is in active danger without protection." The CPS worker looked uncertain. "I'll need to confirm this with your superiors." "By all means." Carter handed her a card. "Call Captain Rivera directly. I've briefed him on the situation Jessica shot Carter a questioning look. Was this true, or a bluff? His slight nod reassured her. While Winters stepped out to make her call, the doctor returned with Emma's test results. "The infection is quite advanced," she informed them gravely. "We're starting broad-spectrum antibiotics, but Emma will need to remain hospitalized for at least several days. She's severely malnourished and dehydrated as well." Emma had drifted into a restless sleep. Her breathing labored, despite the oxygen being administered through a nasal cannula. Zeus remained vigilant beside her, occasionally lifting his head to watch the doorway. "Doctor?" Jessica asked quietly. "Medically speaking, what would be the impact of separating Emma from her dog right now?" The doctor considered this seriously. Given her psychological state and the apparent bond, it could potentially trigger an acute stress response. That additional stress could complicate her recovery, especially given how fragile her system is currently. Jessica nodded gratefully for the honest assessment. "Thank you. That may help our case." The next hour became a complex negotiation between hospital administration, CPS, and Carter's authority as a detective. Jessica watched in admiration as Carter skillfully leveraged his position, making calls to his captain and even the district attorney's office to establish Emma's status as a protected witness. "We've reached a temporary compromise," Carter finally informed Jessica after emerging from a tense meeting. "Zeus can remain with Emma during daytime hours but must be removed at night. Hospital security will be posted outside her room 24/7, and no visitors will be permitted without my direct approval." "And her custody status?" "Temporary emergency placement under police protection. CPS has agreed to postpone formal placement decisions until Emma's health stabilizes and the immediate security concerns are addressed." It wasn't perfect, but it would keep Zeus with Emma during her waking hours. As they discussed logistics, a nurse approached with concern etched on her face. "Excuse me, but your dog seems extremely distressed." They hurried back to Emma's room to find Zeus standing rigidly beside her bed, a low growl emanating from his throat. His attention was fixed on the window, a window that should have been impossible to access from the outside given they were on the third floor. Carter drew his weapon instantly. "Get hospital security. Now!" The nurse fled to make the call while Jessica moved to Emma's side. The girl remained asleep, the medication having finally overcome her anxiety. Carter approached the window cautiously, peering out at the adjacent roof of a lower section of the hospital. "Someone was out there," he confirmed grimly. "There's a maintenance ladder that provides access from the ground level." Zeus hadn't relaxed his vigilant posture, his growl continuing softly. "He still senses something," Jessica observed, her hand protectively on Emma's shoulder. Carter made a quick decision. "We need to move her to a more secure room, one without external access." Hospital security arrived moments later, followed by 2 uniformed police officers responding to Carter's earlier request for protection. Together, they arranged to transfer Emma to a room in the hospital's interior, away from windows, and with a single access point that could be easily monitored. During the transfer, Emma briefly regained consciousness. Immediately reaching for Zeus, the dog pressed his nose gently against her hand, his entire body language changing from alert guardian to gentle companion in an instant. "Zeus?" Emma murmured. "Good boy." The new room was smaller but more defensible. Carter positioned one officer outside the door and asked hospital security to implement visitor restrictions for the entire floor. As these arrangements were made, Zeus suddenly became agitated again, his attention fixing on Emma's backpack that Jessica had brought from the car. "What is it?" boy?" Carter asked, approaching the bag. Zeus pawed at the backpack insistently. Carter carefully opened it, removing Emma's few possessions, the photograph of her father, the worn teddy bear, a change of clothes, and a small notebook. Zeus's attention remained focused on the backpack itself. Carter examined it more closely, running his fingers along the seams and pockets. In the bottom of the main compartment, he found a small tear in the lining. Reaching inside, his fingers touched something flat and hard. "There's something hidden in the lining," he said quietly to Jessica, who was sitting beside Emma's bed. Carefully, Carter extracted a small USB drive sealed in a waterproof pouch, similar to the one Jessica had seen Robert using in Emma's description of her last day with her father. "This could be it," Carter whispered, staring at the drive. "Robert's evidence. He must have hidden it in Emma's backpack, knowing she'd keep it with her." "Why not just give it to you directly?" Jessica asked. "Because he didn't trust anyone completely by the end, not even me. He knew Lambert had connections throughout the department and city government." Carter pocketed the drive. "I need to get this to the DA's cybercrime unit immediately, but I don't want to leave Emma unprotected." "I'll stay with her," Jessica promised. "Zeus and I won't leave her side." Carter nodded gratefully. "I'll have 2 officers posted outside. No one enters without my direct authorization, not hospital staff, not CPS, no one. I should be back within 2 hours." After Carter left, Jessica settled into the uncomfortable visitor's chair beside Emma's bed. Zeus lay on the floor beside her, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes alert, constantly scanning the room and doorway. An hour passed quietly, Emma sleeping fitfully while machines monitored her vital signs. The antibiotics were gradually doing their work, her fever beginning to recede slightly according to the nurse who came to check on her. The peace was shattered when Jessica heard raised voices in the hallway. Zeus was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Emma's bed and the door. "I'm her mother. You have no right to keep me from my daughter." A woman's voice, shrill with emotion, carried through the closed door. Jessica's heart raced. Melissa Reynolds had arrived, but was she here as a concerned mother or as Lambert's proxy? The door opened slightly, and a police officer leaned in. "Ms. Morgan, there's a woman claiming to be Emma's mother. She has identification, but Detective Carter said no exceptions." "Let me speak with her," Jessica decided. "But not in this room. And the officer stays with Emma and Zeus." The officer nodded. Jessica stepped into the hallway, closing the door firmly behind her. Standing before her was a woman who unmistakably shared Emma's features, the same auburn hair, though styled expensively. The same green eyes, now rimmed with red as though she'd been crying. "I'm Melissa Reynolds," the woman stated, her voice quavering. "Where's my daughter? Is she all right?" Jessica maintained a professional demeanor. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm Jessica Morgan with Seattle Family Services. Emma is receiving treatment for pneumonia and malnutrition after living on the streets for nearly 2 months. Where have you been during this time?" Melissa flinched as though slapped. "I had no choice," she whispered. "Richard threatened Emma if I didn't cooperate. He said he'd make sure I never saw her again if I tried to contact her or went to the police." "Richard Lambert," Jessica clarified. Melissa nodded, glancing nervously toward the elevator. "He knows I'm here. His men followed me, but I lost them in the parking garage. please, I need to see my daughter." "That's not my decision to make," Jessica replied carefully. "Emma is under police protection as a witness in an ongoing investigation into your husband's death." "Robert wasn't my husband," Melissa corrected automatically. "We never married, but he was a good father, a good man. He didn't kill himself. Lambert had him murdered when he threatened to expose the fraud." Jessica studied the woman, trying to determine if her distress was genuine. "Emma has been through significant trauma. Mrs. Reynolds, she believes you abandoned her for Lambert." Tears spilled down Melissa's cheeks. "I did what I had to do to keep her safe. Lambert said if I didn't come with him, if I didn't make it look like I'd chosen him over my family, he'd make sure Emma had an accident too. I thought she'd be safer with Mrs. Grady until I could figure something out." Before Jessica could respond, the elevator at the end of the hall opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, the same men Jessica had glimpsed in the hospital lobby earlier. "Melissa," one called. "Mr. Lambert is concerned about you. Let us take you home." Melissa's face drained of color. "They found me," she whispered desperately. "Please, don't let them know Emma is here." Jessica made a split-second decision. She opened the door to Emma's room and pulled Melissa inside, closing and locking it behind them. "Officer," she said to the policeman standing guard, "there are 2 men approaching who may represent a threat to Emma. Detain them." The officer nodded and stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. Inside the room, Zeus had risen to full alert at the sight of Melissa. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he positioned himself beside Emma's bed. "Zeus, it's me," Melissa said softly, taking a tentative step forward. "It's Emma's mom." The dog didn't relax his posture. If anything, his growl intensified. From the bed came a small, hoarse voice. "Mom!" Emma had awakened, her eyes wide as she took in the scene before her, her mother standing just inside the doorway, Zeus protecting her, and Jessica standing uncertainly between them. "Emma?" Melissa breathed, taking another step forward only to stop when Zeus's growl deepened. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you. I thought you'd be safer." Emma's expression remained guarded, years of emotional wisdom in her 7-year-old eyes. "Zeus doesn't trust you," she said simply. And in that moment, the fragile hope in Melissa's face crumbled into despair. Outside Emma's hospital room, raised voices indicated the confrontation between the police officer and Lambert's men was escalating. Inside, an equally tense standoff continued as Zeus maintained his protective position, unwilling to allow Melissa any closer to Emma's bedside. "Please," Melissa pleaded, her voice breaking. "Zeus, it's me." The dog's ears remained flat against his head, his amber eyes unblinking as he assessed the potential threat. Emma watched this exchange with a mixture of confusion and distress, her small hand reaching out to rest on Zeus's back. "Why did you leave me?" Emma asked, her voice small but steady despite her illness. "You said you'd be back in a few days." Melissa took a shuddering breath. "I thought I was protecting you, sweetheart. Richard Lambert threatened to hurt you if I didn't do exactly what he said. He told me what really happened to your father." Jessica positioned herself where she could watch both the door and the unfolding family drama. "Mrs. Reynolds, perhaps this conversation should wait until Emma is stronger." "No," Emma said with surprising firmness. I want to know. Her fingers tightened in Zeus's fur, drawing strength from his presence. Melissa's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, or the strain evident in her face. After your father died, Lambert came to see me privately. He said Robert's death wasn't suicide, it was a warning. He said Robert had discovered financial irregularities in the company books. Evidence of money laundering for some very dangerous people. A commotion outside the door interrupted her explanation. The police officer's voice grew louder, more authoritative. Step back now. This is a restricted area. Jessica moved closer to the door, prepared to intervene if necessary. Zeus remained unmoving, his attention divided between Melissa and the potential threat outside. Lambert told me I had two choices. Melissa continued hurriedly, aware their time might be limited. Either I could publicly reject Robert's crazy conspiracy theories and come work for him where he could keep an eye on me, or I could join Robert, leaving Emma completely alone. So you chose him, Emma stated flatly. I chose to stay alive for you, Melissa corrected, tears streaming down her face. I thought if I played along, I could find evidence to prove what happened to your father. I thought Mrs. Grady would keep you safe until I could figure something out. I never imagined you'd run away, that you'd be living on the streets. The door burst open, causing everyone to jump. Detective Carter rushed in, his expression grim until he registered Melissa's presence. He froze, hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. Melissa Reynolds. Detective Carter, she acknowledged, straightening her posture. I remember you from Robert's funeral. Carter's eyes narrowed with suspicion. How did you get in here? This room is restricted. I brought her in, Jessica explained quickly. Lambert's men followed her here. They're outside now, confronting your officer. Carter stepped back to the doorway, issuing rapid instructions to someone in the hallway before closing the door again. They're being detained for questioning. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm going to need you to explain exactly what you're doing here and what your current relationship is with Richard Lambert. I've been Lambert's prisoner, not his girlfriend, Melissa stated, her voice suddenly stronger. He's kept me under constant surveillance, threatened my daughter's life if I didn't cooperate. I've been looking for an opportunity to escape for months. Convenient timing, Carter noted skeptically. We just discovered evidence that might incriminate Lambert, and suddenly you appear with this story. What evidence? Melissa asked, her attention sharpening. Carter exchanged glances with Jessica, neither willing to reveal what they'd found. Emma watched this adult interplay with the heightened awareness of a child accustomed to gauging emotional undercurrents for her own safety. Zeus doesn't trust her, Emma said simply, breaking the tense silence. All eyes turned to the German shepherd, who maintained his protective stance, unwavering in his assessment of Melissa as a potential threat. He was trained to detect deception, Carter said thoughtfully. Robert once told me Zeus could tell when someone was lying better than any polygraph. Melissa's face crumpled. I'm not lying about Lambert, she insisted, but I didn't tell you everything. She took a deep breath. I knew about Robert's concerns before he died. We argued about it. I told him to leave it alone, to think about our family, our safety. The night before he died, we had a terrible fight. I said things I can never take back. Her voice broke on the last words. I told him he was choosing his principles over his daughter's future. I threatened to leave him if he didn't drop the investigation. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. The next day, he was dead. And I've had to live with the knowledge that my words might have been the last he heard. Something in her raw confession struck a chord. Zeus's posture shifted subtly, not completely relaxed, but no longer actively hostile. He made a soft, whining sound, looking between Emma and her mother. "Zeus," Emma questioned, confused by his change in demeanor. Carter stepped closer to Melissa. "If what you're saying is true, you're in as much danger as Emma. Lambert won't let you walk away with what you know." "I don't care anymore," Melissa said, wiping at her tears. "I can't keep living this lie, not when my daughter has been suffering. I'll testify against Lambert. Tell everything I know. I just want my daughter back." "It's not that simple," Jessica interjected gently. "Emma has been through severe trauma. Rebuilding trust will take time." Emma's voice, small but clear, cut through the adult conversation. "Did you ever look for me, Mom, after you knew I ran away?" The question hung in the air, heartbreaking in its simplicity. Melissa's hands trembled as she answered. "Every day, I hired a private investigator in secret. I drove around the city on the few occasions Lambert let me out alone. I left food in places I thought you might go." Her voice caught. "I left your favorite sandwiches near the playground where you and your father used to go. I hoped Zeus might lead you there." At the mention of the sandwiches, Zeus's ears perked up. Emma's eyes widened with recognition. "The peanut butter sandwiches in the plastic boxes with the smiley faces drawn on the napkins?" Emma asked. Melissa nodded, hope flickering across her face. "You found them." "Zeus found them," Emma corrected. "He would take me to the playground sometimes. There were sandwiches wrapped in plastic with happy faces on the napkins. I thought—" Her voice faltered. "I thought maybe angels were leaving them." The simplicity of Emma's interpretation broke something open in the room. Jessica found herself blinking back tears, while Carter looked away, composing himself. Melissa covered her mouth with her hand, a sob escaping despite her efforts. Zeus finally moved from his protective position. With deliberate steps, he approached Melissa, sniffing her extended hand before pressing his head against it, a tentative acceptance. "He believes you now," Emma said, watching this interaction closely. A commotion outside the door interrupted the moment. Carter moved quickly to investigate, opening the door to find his fellow officer looking concerned. "Detective, hospital security just called. There are more of Lambert's men in the building. They've somehow convinced administration their family representatives authorized to transfer the patient to another facility. They have paperwork that looks legitimate." Carter swore under his breath. "How many?" "At least 4 that security has identified. They're headed this way now." Carter turned back to the room. "We need to move Emma immediately. Lambert is making his play. He must know we have the evidence." "Where can we take her?" Jessica asked, already moving to gather Emma's few belongings. "She's still too sick to leave the hospital. There's a secure wing used for protected witnesses," Carter explained, helping Emma sit up while being careful of her IV line. "I've already called for authorization." Emma's face had grown pale again, the excitement and emotional strain taking its toll on her weakened body. She reached for Zeus, who returned immediately to her side. "I don't feel good," she whispered, her breathing becoming labored again. Alarm flashed across Melissa's face. "She needs a doctor." "There's no time," Carter said grimly. "Those men aren't here to negotiate. If they work for who I think they do, they're here to eliminate a witness and retrieve evidence." The implications of his statement hung heavy in the room. Lambert wasn't just trying to protect his reputation or avoid fraud charges. He was desperate enough to harm a child who might connect him to murder. "Take her," Melissa said suddenly, her face resolute through her tears. "Get Emma somewhere safe. I'll stay here and delay them." "That's too dangerous," Jessica protested. "I'm her mother." Melissa replied firmly. "It's time I started acting like it." She turned to Emma, her expression softening. "I know you don't trust me yet, sweetheart, and that's okay. But I'm going to help Detective Carter keep you safe now. Zeus will stay with you, and I'll see you soon. I promise." Emma studied her mother's face, years of adult understanding in her child's eyes. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. "Zeus," she said weakly. "It's okay. Help Mom, too." The German shepherd looked between mother and daughter, ancient canine wisdom seeming to assess the situation. With deliberate movement, he pressed his head briefly against Melissa's hand before returning to Emma's side, ready to follow wherever she was taken. "Go," Melissa urged them. "I'll buy you time." The secure wing of Virginia Mason Hospital occupied the 4th floor of the East Building, an area typically reserved for high-profile patients or those requiring protection. Carter led their small procession through service corridors. Emma cradled in his arms while a nurse carefully managed her IV pole. Zeus padded silently beside them, his attention constantly scanning their surroundings, while Jessica followed with Emma's backpack and the few belongings they'd gathered in haste. "What will happen to my mom?" Emma asked weakly. Her face pressed against Carter's shoulder. "She'll be fine," Carter assured her, though the tightness in his jaw suggested less certainty than his words conveyed. "I have officers with her. She's helping us create a diversion." They reached the secure wing without incident, greeted by a nurse with military posture and efficiency who directed them to a private room already prepared for Emma's arrival. The space was sterile and impersonal but featured enhanced security, a camera monitoring the hallway outside, windows that didn't open, and a direct line to hospital security. Once Emma was settled in bed, her vital signs checked and oxygen flow adjusted, Carter stepped into the hallway with Jessica. "I need to get back to Melissa before Lambert's people realize they've been tricked," he said in a low voice. "Stay here with Emma. Don't open the door for anyone except me or medical staff wearing these specific badges." He showed her the distinctive red stripe on his temporary hospital credentials. "What about the evidence you found?" Jessica asked. "It's secure. I made a digital copy and sent it to the DA's cybercrime unit before returning." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The data on that drive doesn't just implicate Lambert in financial crimes. There's evidence suggesting connections to at least 3 city officials, a judge, and someone high up in the police department." Jessica absorbed this information, understanding its implications. That's why Robert didn't trust anyone. The corruption was more widespread than just Lambert Enterprises. Exactly. And it means we can't trust normal channels until we know exactly who's involved. Carter checked his weapon discreetly. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Keep that door locked." After Carter departed, Jessica returned to Emma's bedside. The girl had drifted into an uneasy sleep, one hand resting on Zeus's head where the dog had positioned himself beside her bed. The German shepherd's vigilance hadn't wavered despite the secure surroundings. His ears remained alert to every sound from the hallway. Jessica settled into the visitor's chair, allowing herself a moment to process the whirlwind of revelations. Melissa's return complicated an already complex situation. If her story was true, and Zeus's eventual acceptance suggested, it might be then both mother and daughter had been victims of Lambert's manipulation and threats. But Jessica had worked in social services long enough to remain cautious about sudden reappearances and convenient explanations. Her thoughts were interrupted by Emma stirring, the girl's eyes fluttering open with the disorientation of fever. "Where's my mom?" she asked, voice raspy. "She's helping Detective Carter," Jessica explained gently. "They're making sure the bad men can't find you." Emma processed this information with the solemn consideration Jessica had come to recognize as characteristic of her beyond her years' maturity. "Zeus trusted her," Emma finally said. "At the end, that means she was telling the truth, right?" "I think so," Jessica agreed. "Zeus seems to be an excellent judge of character." Emma's hand tightened in Zeus's fur. "Dad said Zeus could always tell good people from bad. That's why he was such a good police dog." She fell silent for a moment, then added, "I was so angry at Mom. I thought she didn't want me anymore." "That would be a natural way to feel," Jessica acknowledged. "Finding out she was trying to protect you doesn't erase those feelings overnight." "I don't know how to feel now," Emma admitted, wisdom beyond her years evident in her furrowed brow. "I'm still sad and scared." "All those feelings are okay," Jessica assured her. "You've been through more than most adults could handle. Emma, you're incredibly brave." A knock at the door startled them both. Zeus was instantly alert, moving to position himself between the door and Emma's bed. Jessica approached cautiously, remembering Carter's warning. "Who is it?" she called. "Dr. Mercer," came the reply. "I need to check on Emma's condition." Jessica peered through the small window in the door. A middle-aged woman in a white coat stood outside, holding a clipboard and wearing an ID badge with the red stripe Carter had described. Still cautious, Jessica opened the door only partially. "I need to see your credentials," she requested. The doctor presented her badge without hesitation. "I understand the security concerns. Detective Carter briefed me on the situation." Satisfied, Jessica allowed her entry. Zeus remained vigilant but didn't growl, another good sign. The doctor checked Emma's vitals and adjusted her medication, explaining that the antibiotics were working but recovery would take time. "You've been through quite an ordeal," Dr. Mercer said kindly to Emma. "But you have quite the protector here." She nodded toward Zeus, who watched her every move with attentive eyes. After the doctor left, Emma fell back asleep, exhaustion and medication pulling her under. Jessica checked the time. Nearly 2 hours had passed since Carter left to assist Melissa. She was considering calling him when her phone vibrated with a text message. "Coming up with news. ETA 5 minutes." True to his word, Carter appeared 5 minutes later, looking haggard but determined. Jessica let him in, immediately noting the absence of Melissa. "Where's Emma's mother?" she asked quietly, mindful of the sleeping child. Carter ran a hand through his hair. Being treated in the ER. She'll be fine. But Lambert's men weren't gentle when they realized she wasn't Emma. What happened? Melissa did exactly what she promised, created a diversion. She pretended to be preparing Emma for transfer, covered a pillow with Emma's jacket, and was wheeling it out when Lambert's men intercepted her. They realized the deception pretty quickly, but by then we had Emma secure. His expression darkened. They were going to take her instead until my officers intervened. There was a struggle. Melissa got knocked down, hit her head. Jessica absorbed this information. So she really was trying to protect Emma. Appears that way. Carter looked over at the sleeping child and her canine guardian. The good news is we've detained 2 of Lambert's men. They're being questioned now. The bad news is Lambert himself has disappeared. His executive assistant reported him leaving the country on an emergency business trip to the Cayman Islands this morning. Convenient timing. Very. But we have the evidence from the drive Robert hid, plus Melissa's testimony. The DA is preparing warrants as we speak. Carter lowered his voice further. The drive contained far more than financial records. Robert had been gathering evidence for nearly a year, recorded conversations, photographs, detailed logs of meetings between Lambert and various officials. He documented everything. Why didn't he just turn it over to authorities? Because he discovered the corruption went deeper than he initially thought. There are recordings where Lambert explicitly mentions having friends in the department who would ensure any investigation went nowhere. Carter's expression was grim. Robert was building an airtight case because he knew he'd only get one shot at exposing the whole network. Zeus lifted his head suddenly. Ears perked toward the door seconds before another knock sounded. Carter motioned for Jessica to stay with Emma while he checked. Detective Carter. It's Agent Wilson, FBI. Carter verified the credentials of the woman outside before allowing her entry. Agent Wilson was a composed, no-nonsense woman in her 40s, whose sharp eyes took in the room's occupants in one sweeping glance. The Seattle field office received your evidence package an hour ago, she stated without preamble. Given the implications of corruption within local law enforcement, the case has been elevated to federal jurisdiction. Emma stirred at the new voice, blinking awake. Zeus immediately returned to her side, offering comfort with his presence. "Who are you?" Emma asked directly, studying the newcomer. Agent Wilson's professional demeanor softened slightly. "My name is Sarah Wilson. I'm with the FBI. I'm here to help make sure you and your mom stay safe." FBI means Federal Bureau of Investigation, Emma recited, surprising the adults. "Dad taught me about different kinds of police." "That's right," Wilson acknowledged with a small smile. "Your dad was a very brave man." "Emma, the information he collected is going to help us catch some very bad people." "The men who hurt him?" Emma asked, a tremor in her voice. Agent Wilson exchanged glances with Carter before answering carefully. "We believe so." "Yes." "I knew Dad didn't kill himself," Emma stated with quiet certainty. "He promised he'd never leave me on purpose." And the simple faith in her father's promise hung in the air, a testament to Robert Reynolds' character and the bond he'd shared with his daughter. Jessica found herself blinking back tears. Wilson cleared her throat. "I've been briefed on Zeus's significance to both the case and to Emma's well-being. We've arranged for him to be officially designated as a material witness and protective asset. which will prevent anyone from separating him from Emma during this process. The relief on Emma's face was immediate and profound. She buried her fingers in Zeus's fur, drawing strength from his solid presence. "What about my mom?" she asked after a moment. "She's being treated for a mild concussion," Carter explained gently. "Once the doctors clear her, she'll be brought here under protective custody as well." Lambert's associates have been quite informative once confronted with the evidence we already possess, Wilson added. 2 have agreed to testify against Lambert in exchange for reduced sentences. "Will they go to jail?" Emma asked. "The men who hurt my dad?" "Yes." Wilson confirmed. "What your father discovered will put a lot of bad people in prison for a very long time." Emma considered this, her young face solemn. "Dad would be happy about that. He always said doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard." The wisdom in her words left the adults momentarily speechless. Zeus pressed closer to Emma, as if offering silent agreement with her assessment. The door opened again, and a nurse appeared with a wheelchair carrying Melissa Reynolds. A bandage covered one side of her forehead, and bruising was beginning to show around her left eye, but her attention was focused entirely on her daughter. "Emma," she breathed, relief evident in her voice. Zeus again surprised everyone by immediately walking to Melissa, sniffing her extended hand before pressing his head against it in what appeared to be a gesture of comfort. The dog then returned to Emma, looking between mother and daughter as if encouraging reconciliation. "Mom," Emma said, her voice small and uncertain, "your head is hurt." "I'm okay, sweetheart," Melissa assured her, allowing the nurse to wheel her closer to the bed. "It looks worse than it feels." An awkward silence fell, years of separation and misunderstanding creating a chasm neither knew how to bridge. Zeus whined softly, nudging Emma's hand with his nose. "Zeus wants me to talk to you." Emma interpreted, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "He's being bossy." "He always was," Melissa replied, her own smile tremulous. "Your father said Zeus had the soul of a guidance counselor in a dog's body." The shared memory of Robert created a moment of connection, a tiny bridge across the divide. Emma reached out hesitantly, and Melissa took her hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. Emma, I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. I should have found another way." "Zeus took care of me," Emma said simply. "Just like Dad said he would." Zeus, seeming to understand he was being discussed, placed his head on the bed between their joined hands, completing the circle of reconnection. In that moment, the truth that Robert Reynolds had entrusted to his loyal companion had served its purpose, not just bringing justice for his death, but beginning the healing of the family he'd left behind. 6 months later, autumn painted Seattle's trees in vibrant oranges and reds as Emma Reynolds skipped up the walkway to a modest craftsman home in Queen Anne. Zeus trotted beside her, his posture relaxed but watchful, a habit that hadn't faded despite their newfound security. At 7.5 years old, Emma now carried herself with the resilient confidence of a child who had faced the worst and survived. Her auburn hair, neatly braided and tied with blue ribbons that matched her backpack, caught the afternoon sunlight. "We're home," she called as she burst through the front door, Zeus following close behind. Detective James Carter, now simply Jim. To Emma, looked up from his laptop at the kitchen table and smiled. "There's my favorite student. How was school today?" "We did science experiments with leaves," Emma announced, dropping her backpack on a chair. "And I got an A on my history test." "That's fantastic," Jim said, genuine pride warming his voice. "Your mom called?" "She'll be home around 5. Her counseling session ran long today." Emma nodded with the solemn understanding of a child who had learned that healing took many forms. Melissa attended twice-weekly therapy sessions, working through her trauma and guilt while rebuilding her life. The changes of the past 6 months had been enormous for all of them. After Richard Lambert's arrest in the Cayman Islands and subsequent extradition, the case had blown open like a dam breaking. 17 indictments followed, including 3 city officials, a judge, and the deputy police commissioner. The scandal had rocked Seattle, but for Emma, the personal aftermath had been even more profound. With Lambert in custody and the immediate danger past, the question of Emma's placement had become paramount. Melissa, though clearly remorseful and vindicated by events, had relinquished her parental rights temporarily while she sought treatment for PTSD and depression. Emma, still recovering from pneumonia and emotional trauma, needed stability and protection during the months of depositions and preparations for Lambert's trial. Detective Carter had shocked everyone by offering a solution. As Robert's former friend and colleague, he volunteered to become Emma's temporary guardian, with Melissa's blessing. His modest home had enough space for Emma, Zeus, and eventually Melissa as she progressed in her recovery. The arrangement was intended to be temporary, but over months had evolved into something that felt increasingly permanent, a found family forged in tragedy but sustained by genuine care. Jessica called too, Jim added as Emma retrieved a snack from the refrigerator. "She's stopping by this evening to go over some paperwork." Emma brightened at the news. Jessica Morgan had remained a constant presence in their lives, transitioning from social worker to family friend. Her advocacy had been instrumental in keeping Zeus with Emma throughout the entire process, challenging the system's rigidity regarding emotional support animals. "Is it about the adoption?" Emma asked, her directness another trait that had survived her ordeal. Jim nodded, his expression softening. "Yes. She's bringing the preliminary paperwork for us all to review." The adoption was a complex arrangement that reflected their unconventional family structure. Jim would legally adopt Emma, with Melissa retaining her parental rights and continuing to live with them. The 3 adults, Jim, Melissa, and Jessica, had spent hours discussing the plan, always with Emma's well-being at the center. "Zeus, dinner!" Emma called, and the German shepherd padded to his bowl in the corner of the kitchen. At 8 years old now, Zeus showed subtle signs of aging, a touch of gray around his muzzle. Slightly less spring in his step, but his devotion remained unwavering. The doorbell rang as Emma was finishing her snack. Zeus lifted his head, alert but not alarmed. He had grown accustomed to their regular visitors. "I'll get it," Jim called, making his way to the front door. Jessica Morgan stood on the porch, her arms filled with folders and what appeared to be a gift bag. "Come in." Jim welcomed her. "Emma just got home from school." "Perfect timing," Jessica smiled, setting her paperwork on the entry table to accept Emma's enthusiastic hug. "I brought something for you," she told the girl, handing her the gift bag. Emma opened it to find a framed photograph of herself, Zeus, her mother, Jim, and Jessica, taken at Zeus's official recognition ceremony last month. The Seattle Police Department had posthumously honored Robert Reynolds and acknowledged Zeus's role in bringing down Lambert's criminal network. The German Shepherd had been awarded a special commendation, becoming something of a local celebrity in the process. "For your room," Jessica explained, "to add to your collection." Emma's bedroom walls were covered with photographs, old ones of her father, new ones of their evolving family, and newspaper clippings about the case. Rather than hiding from her past, Emma had chosen to embrace it as part of her story, something both her therapist and mother encouraged. "Thank you," Emma said, studying the picture with satisfaction before running upstairs to find the perfect spot for it. "How's she doing?" Jessica asked Jim once Emma was out of earshot. "Better every day," he replied. "The nightmares are less frequent now. The school counselor says she's integrating well, making friends. She's resilient." "And Melissa," Jim's expression softened. "Making progress. Her therapist says the guilt is the hardest part. She still blames herself for not finding another way to protect Emma. But she's getting stronger. She started interviewing for accounting positions last week." Jessica nodded approvingly. "And how about you? This wasn't exactly in your life plan 6 months ago." Jim chuckled, the sound warm in the cozy living room. "Best detour I ever took. Robert and I were partners for years before he left the force for accounting. When he died—" His voice trailed off momentarily. "Let's just say I had my own guilt to work through. This feels like making good on an old promise to look after his family if anything happened to him." The front door opened as Melissa arrived home early, looking tired but content. Zeus greeted her with a gentle nudge of his nose against her hand, their established ritual. She scratched behind his ears in response, her eyes automatically scanning the room for Emma. "She's upstairs," Jim supplied. Jessica brought the adoption paperwork. Melissa nodded, hanging her coat by the door. "Good. I've been thinking about what we discussed, about Emma keeping the Reynolds name but adding Carter." "Emma Reynolds Carter has a nice ring to it," Jessica agreed. "Hyphenated names are common these days." "Mom," Emma called, thundering back down the stairs with the energy only a recovering child could muster. "Look where I put the picture." She grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her toward the stairs. As Melissa allowed herself to be led away, Jim and Jessica shared a knowing look. The path forward wasn't without challenges. Lambert's trial was still months away, requiring Emma's testimony and dredging up painful memories. Melissa's recovery would continue to have difficult days. The unconventional family structure would raise eyebrows among the more traditional. But watching Emma chattering excitedly to her mother, Zeus following faithfully behind them, the truth was, undeniable love had found a way to heal what once seemed irreparably broken. Later that evening, as autumn rain tapped gently against the windows, the expanded family gathered in the living room. Emma sat on the floor, leaning against Zeus's warm body while working on her homework. Melissa and Jim reviewed the adoption paperwork with Jessica, their quiet conversation punctuated occasionally by questions for Emma about her preferences. As bedtime approached, Emma gathered her schoolbooks and stood, Zeus rising immediately to follow her upstairs. "Good night," she said, hugging each adult in turn. "Love you." The simple phrase, once rare but now part of their daily ritual, filled the room with quiet joy. As Emma climbed the stairs, Zeus padding faithfully beside her, Melissa watched with eyes bright with unshed tears. She's going to be okay, isn't she? She whispered, more statement than question. Jessica squeezed her hand. She already is. Upstairs, Emma settled into bed, Zeus taking his customary position beside her. From her nightstand, Robert Reynolds smiled from a framed photograph, a constant presence watching over his daughter. "Good night, Dad," Emma whispered, a ritual that brought comfort rather than pain now. "Zeus is still protecting me, just like you said he would." As if in response, Zeus rested his head on the edge of her bed, amber eyes reflecting the soft lamplight. In the security of their new home, surrounded by people who loved her, Emma drifted to sleep with her hand resting on Zeus's head. Guardian and friend, the constant bridge between her past and her future. Outside, Seattle's rain continued its gentle rhythm, washing away the last leaves of autumn, preparing the world for new beginnings. In a world that often feels increasingly disconnected, Emma and Zeus's journey reminds us of what truly matters. When we look at this little girl sleeping on Seattle streets with her loyal German shepherd, we're confronted with both heartbreak and hope, emotions many of us understand all too well at this stage of life. Like Emma, we've weathered storms, lost loved ones, and faced betrayals. We've known what it means to have our foundation shaken, but we've also experienced the profound power of unwavering loyalty. Like Zeus standing guard through the darkest nights, this story touches something timeless in us, the knowledge that family isn't always defined by blood, but by who stands beside us when the world turns cold. For those of us who've raised children, protected loved ones, or found second chances later in life, Emma's journey from abandonment to belonging resonates deeply. It speaks to our fundamental belief that even after devastating loss, healing is possible, that sometimes the family we build from broken pieces becomes stronger than what came before, and that in the twilight of our lives, what matters most isn't what we've lost, but the love we've found along the way.